when my son looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, you're not welcome for Christmas this year. You'll only ruin the mood." I smiled. I nodded. And then I went upstairs into the very house he was living in for free and made a phone call that changed everything. People like to think betrayal comes from strangers. But no, the sharpest knives are always the ones handed to you by family. You raise them. You feed them. You sacrifice every piece of yourself so they can stand tall. And one day they grow tall enough to look down on you. That was my son, my only child. And the cruelest words I'd ever heard in my life didn't come from an enemy. They came from him. But let me take you back, because my revenge wasn't born in one night. It was carved slowly, over years of sacrifice, love, and disappointment. I had been a single mother since my son, Daniel, was 4 years old. His father left us with nothing but debt. He walked out the door one summer morning and never came back. From that day forward, every bill, every responsibility, every scraped knee, and every nightmare in the middle of the night fell on me. I worked 2 jobs for years, one at the diner in the mornings and another cleaning offices at night. Sometimes I'd get home so exhausted I would collapse on the couch without even changing my clothes. But I always woke up before dawn, packed his lunch, and made sure he had clean clothes for school. I gave up college. I gave up vacations. I gave up dating, friendships, sleep, everything, just to make sure Daniel had a chance at a good life. And for a long time, I thought it was worth it. Daniel was smart, funny, and kind when he was younger. He used to bring me little notes from school saying I was the best mum. He used to cry if I had to work late. I thought, maybe, just maybe, all of this pain would pay off. That one day when he was grown, he'd look back and understand. But life doesn't work like that. Not for me. Somewhere along the way my son changed. Maybe it was the influence of his girlfriend, Melissa. Maybe it was the comfort of knowing I'd always bail him out. Or maybe deep down he was just always selfish. I don't know. But I do know one thing. Love makes you blind. And I was blind to who he had become. By the time he was 25, Daniel had already racked up thousands of dollars in debt. Credit cards, unpaid loans, you name it. And who was always there to clean it up? Me. When his car got repossessed, I drained my savings to buy him a used one. When he lost his job, I covered his rent. When Melissa complained they couldn't start a life together because money was tight, I signed the deed of my house over to him, under the promise that I could stay there as long as I needed. That house wasn't just walls and bricks. It was my entire life. I bought it with years of scrubbing toilets and refilling coffee cups. But I told myself, he's my son. This is his future. This is my legacy. What a fool I was. Fast forward to last Christmas. The tree was up. I had spent weeks baking, decorating, making sure everything was perfect. Christmas was always my favorite holiday. It was the one time of year I could make Daniel feel like he was a kid again, even if just for one night. But instead of excitement, there was tension. Melissa barely looked at me. Daniel avoided my eyes. Something was off. Finally, 2 days before Christmas, Daniel sat me down in the living room. He cleared his throat like he was giving a speech. "Mom," he said, not even calling me Mommy like he used to. Just Mom. Cold. Distant. Melissa and I have been talking. "We think it would be better if you didn't come to Christmas this year." I blinked. "What?" Melissa smirked from the kitchen doorway. "It's nothing personal," she said. "We just want a drama-free holiday." "Drama?" I whispered. "I've been planning Christmas for weeks. This is my home." Daniel shook his head. "No, Mom. It's our home now. You signed it over, remember? We need space. You're suffocating us. And honestly, you'll only ruin the mood." The words cut deeper than any knife. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap him across the face and remind him of every night I went hungry so he could eat. Every bone in my body ached with anger. But instead, I smiled. "All right, Daniel," I said softly, "if that's what you want." And I went upstairs. The thing about sacrifice is, it makes you powerful in ways people don't expect. When you give and give, people assume you're weak. They think you'll never stop. But what they don't realize is that the person who gives everything also holds everything. I still had the paperwork, I still had the receipts, and I still had the one thing Daniel and Melissa needed more than Christmas: the house. So while they laughed downstairs, thinking they had won, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. "Remember that clause we discussed?" I whispered, "It's time." And that's when my revenge began. People always ask me, "Why did you give up so much for him? Why didn't you keep something for yourself?" And the truth is, because he was all I had. When Daniel's father left, I was only 27, too young to be a widow, but too old to pretend life would magically fix itself. I remember standing in our small apartment, Daniel clinging to my leg, asking why Daddy wasn't coming back. I didn't have the heart to tell him that his father chose freedom over family. So I lied. I told him Daddy went away for work. For years, he believed it, and for years, I carried the weight of both parents on my shoulders. I grew up poor, dirt poor. Hand-me-down shoes with holes in the soles, canned soup for dinner, Christmas presents that came from church donations. I swore that my son would never know that kind of hunger. So I worked. I took every shift I could get. At the diner, I'd smile, at customers who barely tipped. At night, I'd scrub floors in silent office buildings until my knees ached. There were nights I'd fall asleep in the break room only to wake up and rush to school to pick him up. My body broke down in ways I didn't even notice back then. My hands cracked from cleaning chemicals. My back stiffened from lifting. My eyes were always bloodshot. But every time I saw Daniel's face light up when I handed him a hot meal, or when I tucked him into a bed in a warm house instead of a shelter, I thought, this is worth it. Every single sacrifice felt like a down payment on his future. The years went by, and I didn't just provide the basics. I tried to give him the little luxuries, too. When he wanted to play soccer but couldn't afford cleats, I pawned my grandmother's necklace. When he wanted to go on the school field trip to Washington, I took out a payday loan I'm still ashamed of. And when he graduated high school, I thought I'd finally made it. I sat in the audience, clapping until my hands stung, tears rolling down my cheeks. In that moment, I believed all the pain had led us here. My son, stepping into a brighter future. But that future didn't come. College didn't last long. Daniel partied more than he studied. Within a year, he dropped out. He said tuition was too expensive, that it was pointless. But deep down, I knew the truth. He didn't want to work hard. Still, I didn't stop supporting him. I told myself, he'll find his way. I helped him apply for jobs, bought him clothes for interviews, even paid for gas so he could drive to work. And every time he failed, I picked him up. That's the problem with giving endlessly. You teach people that consequences don't exist. Then Melissa came into the picture. She was beautiful, I'll admit that. Sharp jawline, perfect nails, eyes that always seemed to be scanning the room for something better. The first time I met her, she smiled too wide and called me Mrs. Thompson instead of Mum. I knew then she didn't see me as family. She saw me as an obstacle. At first, I tried to get along with her. I invited her to dinner, bought her little gifts, even helped pay for her and Daniel's apartment deposit. But no matter what I did, she treated me like I was intruding. When Daniel lost another job, Melissa complained to me. "He needs stability," she said. "We can't live like this forever." So what did I do? I made the biggest mistake of my life. I gave them my house. It was a modest 2-story place with a wraparound porch. I bought it after years of saving, telling myself it was proof I'd finally broken the cycle of poverty. Every nail in those walls was paid for with my sweat. But Daniel and Melissa wanted a fresh start. So I signed the deed over to them on the condition that I could stay in one of the upstairs rooms. "Of course, Mom," Daniel said, hugging me. "You'll always have a place here. This is your home too." Those words kept me warm that night. I truly believed he meant them. For a while, things seemed okay. Melissa decorated the house in her own style, sleek, modern, expensive-looking. My old furniture was pushed into storage. The kitchen I once filled with the smell of home-cooked meals now smelled like takeout containers and store-bought candles. I didn't complain. I stayed quiet. I thought, they're young. Let them build their life. But slowly I became invisible in my own home. Melissa rolled her eyes whenever I spoke. Daniel stopped eating dinner with me. I became the ghost in the upstairs bedroom, the one who paid half the bills but never got thanked. Still, I told myself it was fine, because family sacrifices for each other, because mothers endure, because love forgives. Until the night Daniel told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas. That was when the illusions shattered. I sat on my bed, staring at the walls I once painted myself, the same walls where Daniel had scribbled with crayons as a child. And I realized I wasn't living with my son. I was living with strangers who thought I was disposable. And worse, I had handed them the knife they used to cut me out. I had signed over my power. I had given them everything. But what they didn't know was that I had kept one secret. One clause. When I gave Daniel the house, my lawyer suggested something. A life estate clause. A simple line that guaranteed I could live in the house until the day I died. No one could kick me out. No one could sell it without my consent. At the time, I thought it was just a formality, a safety net I'd never need. But now, that clause was my salvation. And it would become the weapon of my revenge, because when someone you love shows you their cruelty, you stop begging for their love. You start planning their downfall. Christmas morning, the day I had been erased from, the day they told me I was unwelcome. But I wasn't sitting alone in my quiet kitchen. I wasn't crying into cold coffee. Number. I was standing at their doorstep, snow crunching beneath my boots, a small gift bag in one hand, a folder full of papers in the other. I rang the doorbell. The chime echoed inside. I heard footsteps, voices, the muffled sound of my granddaughter's laughter. Then the door opened. Hannah stood there. Her smile froze the second she saw me. Her perfect holiday lipstick cracked into shock. "Mrs. Walker," she said, her voice thin. "What are you doing here?" I smiled sweetly. "Merry Christmas, Hannah. I just came to deliver a gift." Her eyes darted past me, searching for an escape. She half closed the door. "I think James told you." But then James appeared behind her. My son, my only son, his face pale, his jaw clenched. "Mom," he said flatly, "this isn't a good time." I tilted my head. "Not a good time?" "It's Christmas morning, James. Surely there's time for your mother," stepped forward, blocking Hannah like a guard. "Mom, we talked about this." We said no. I held up the small bag. "Relax. I only brought a gift for my granddaughter." That's all. His eyes narrowed, suspicious. But behind him, I saw her little face peek around the corner. "Grandma?" she chirped. The sound cracked something in me. Her voice was light, pure, untainted by the bitterness of her parents. I bent slightly, smiling. "Yes, sweetheart. Grandma's here. I brought you something." She darted forward before Hannah could stop her. She took the bag from my hand, her tiny fingers clutching it with joy. "Thank you, Grandma," she squealed. For a moment, the world softened. For a moment, it felt like family again. But then Hannah's voice sliced through the air. "Go inside, honey. We'll open it later." The little girl pouted, but obeyed. The door clicked shut behind her. And then, it was just us. James folded his arms. "Mom, what are you trying to do? Show up uninvited? Make a scene?" I smiled. "Oh no, James. I didn't come to make a scene. I came to give you something, too." His brow furrowed. I reached into my coat and pulled out the folder. I handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "Proof," I said simply. He opened it. Page after page of receipts, bank statements, letters from the mortgage company, my signature, my payments, my sacrifices. His eyes darted across the pages. Color drained from his face. Hannah leaned over his shoulder, scanning quickly. Her face tightened, her lips pressing into a thin line. "What is this supposed to mean?" she snapped. "It means," I said calmly, "that everything you bragged about, everything you claimed to build on your own, was built on my back, my money, my sacrifices. And now everyone will know it." James's hands shook as he gripped the papers. "Mum, why would you— why?" I interrupted, my voice rising for the first time. "Why, James?" "Because you looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't welcome in the very house I bought for you. Because your wife whispers poison in your ear and makes me out to be a burden. Because you chose her lies over my love." That's why Hannah stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "You had no right to interfere in our marriage, in our finances." I cut her off with a sharp laugh. "No right? Hannah, without me you wouldn't have finances. Without me you wouldn't be standing in this house, in this neighborhood, pretending you're better than the rest of us." Her face flushed crimson. "You bitter old woman." But James silenced her with a raised hand. "Enough, Hannah." She froze. For the first time she looked uncertain. James turned to me. His eyes were wet. "Mum, I didn't know it meant this much to you." I thought. "No, James," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "You didn't think. You didn't remember. You didn't care. And now, it's too late." His lips parted. "Too late? What do you mean?" I leaned closer. "I cancelled the mortgage. The payments are yours now, every penny, every month. And when you can't keep up, when the bank comes knocking, maybe then you'll remember just how much your mother mattered." The words hit him like a blow. His face crumpled. Hannah gasped. You wouldn't—" James stammered. "I already did," I said coldly. And then— silence. The three of us stood there, snow falling softly around us, the warmth of their house spilling onto the porch while I stood in the cold. But for the first time, I wasn't the weak one. I wasn't the outcast. I wasn't the burden. I was the reckoning. James whispered, his voice breaking. "Mom, please, don't do this." I looked at him, at the boy I had raised, at the man who had forgotten me, and I said the words I never thought I'd say. "You made your choice, James. Now you live with it." Then I turned, and I walked away. The door closed behind me. The silence swallowed them whole, and I knew this was only the beginning. They didn't just cut me out of Christmas, they cut through my heart. That night I remember the smell of gingerbread cookies filling the kitchen. I had been up since morning, baking, roasting, preparing every single dish Daniel used to love as a child. Apple pie, honey ham, my special cinnamon rolls. My hands were aching, but my heart felt full. I thought, maybe this Christmas could bring us together again. But instead of gratitude, what I received was humiliation. Melissa came into the kitchen, her perfect nails tapping against the counter, her lips curled in that fake little smile she wore when she wanted to deliver venom. "You know," she said casually. You really should understand. This isn't your house anymore. It's ours. You're just a guest here, and guests know when to leave. The words hit me harder than any slap could. I stared at her, my hands still covered in flour, my apron tied around my waist. I wanted to scream, to throw the pan of cookies straight at her smug little face. But I didn't. I just stood there, my chest tight, my throat dry. And then Daniel walked in. He didn't defend me. He didn't tell her to shut her mouth. No, he looked at me with those same cold eyes he had the night before and said, "She's right, Mom. You always try to control everything. This is our home now, and I think it's time you learned your place. My place. My son. The little boy who once clung to my leg, who cried whenever I left for work at night, who told me I was his hero, was now telling me I didn't belong. I should have broken down in that moment. I should have begged him to remember who I was. But instead I smiled. It wasn't joy. It wasn't amusement. It was the kind of smile a wounded animal gives when it knows it's about to bite back. "All right, Daniel," I whispered. "If that's what you want." And I left the kitchen. Upstairs, in the small room they thought they had confined me to, I pulled out an old diary. Inside, tucked between pages of faded notes and recipes, was a number. My lawyer's number. My hands didn't shake when I dialed. My voice didn't crack when he answered. "It's time," I said simply. There was silence on the line, then a knowing sigh. I wondered how long it would take. "You're ready to enforce the clause?" "Yes," I said. "They want me gone. But before I go anywhere, they'll learn exactly whose house this really is." That night, as they laughed downstairs, clinking glasses of wine and planning a Christmas that didn't include me, I sat in bed with my phone pressed to my chest. They thought they had broken me, but all they had done was awaken a part of me I had buried years ago. The part that survived when Daniel's father left. The part that fought through exhaustion when 2 jobs nearly destroyed me. The part that learned that love without respect is just weakness waiting to be used. I wasn't weak anymore, and they were about to find out what happens when you turn a mother into your enemy. The very next morning, the first crack appeared in their perfect little world. A letter arrived. Thick, stamped, official. Melissa was the one who grabbed it from the mailbox. I watched her from the top of the stairs as she tore it open, her expression twisting from curiosity to horror. "What is this?" she shouted, storming into the kitchen. She slammed the papers onto the table in front of Daniel. "It says here your mother has a life estate clause on the house. She's basically saying this place is still hers." Daniel looked at me, panic flashing in his eyes. "Mom, what is this?" I came down the stairs slowly, every step deliberate, every breath calm. I picked up the notice and laid it flat. "It's the law, Daniel. When I signed the house over, I added one small condition. I have the right to live here until the day I die. No one can kick me out. Not you, not her, not anyone." Melissa's face went red with fury. "That's cheating!" she snapped. I looked her straight in the eye. "No, that's foresight. You wanted me gone. You wanted to call me a guest. Well, now you'll see what happens when the guest refuses to leave." Daniel didn't say a word. He just sat there, his head in his hands. He knew he couldn't fight it. He knew I was untouchable, and that was the moment the balance of power shifted. But revenge, real revenge, doesn't come all at once. It builds slowly. It seeps into every corner. It twists the knife 1 inch at a time until the betrayer bleeds from wounds they can't see. And I was ready to bleed them dry. From that day forward, I became the storm inside their house. Not with shouting, not with screaming, but with silence, with decisions, with control. Everything they thought was theirs, I would remind them it was mine. Every luxury they thought they deserved, I would take it away. and every ounce of respect they thought they commanded? I would rip from their hands and expose them for what they really were, parasites living off the woman they had betrayed. I swore it to myself that night as I closed my bedroom door and stared out the window at the cold December sky. You wanted me gone. I whispered into the darkness. Now you'll wish you never asked for that. Because the games had only just begun. The days after that notice arrived were delicious. Melissa could barely look at me without her face tightening in rage. Daniel avoided me altogether, slipping out of rooms whenever I entered, as though my very presence weighed on his chest. I didn't gloat openly. No, I carried on as though nothing had changed. I made tea in the mornings. I read in my chair. I hummed old songs while folding my laundry. But the silence that followed me through the house was deafening. They knew what I had done. They knew they couldn't touch me. And that silence, oh, it was sweeter than any Christmas carol. But Melissa wasn't the kind of woman to accept defeat. 3 nights after the letter arrived, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. "You should have told me about this before," Melissa hissed. "I didn't think it mattered," Daniel shot back. "She signed the house over. How was I supposed to know she put in some stupid clause?" "Stupid?" Melissa's voice dripped with venom. "Do you realize what this means?" "She has the legal right to stay here. Forever. Do you want your mummy living with us until we're old?" I could almost hear Daniel shrinking under her fury. His voice was small, almost pathetic. "What do you want me to do?" Melissa's answer was sharp, quick. "Make her life miserable enough that she leaves on her own." I closed my eyes at that. So, that was their plan. They thought they could outlast me. They thought they could push me out of the house I built, the house I sacrificed for, by making me uncomfortable. Oh, how little they knew me. The campaign began subtly. Melissa started locking the fridge at night. She kept the key on her chain, dangling like a trophy. When I went to grab milk one morning, I found a padlock staring back at me. I laughed, out loud. Did she really think I couldn't feed myself? I had raised a child on scraps, stretched pennies into meals, survived nights with nothing but crackers and tap water. Locking the fridge was a petty move, one that only showed how desperate she was. So I went shopping. I filled my room with groceries, a little fridge, a hot plate, and suddenly I didn't need her kitchen at all. I carried my groceries upstairs in plain sight, one bag at a time, never saying a word. Melissa fumed. Daniel pretended not to notice. The battle lines were drawn. Next came the noise. Late-night arguments, music blasting through the walls, doors slamming hard enough to rattle my bed frame. Melissa's laughter rang out, high-pitched and cruel, every time I tried to sleep. One night, around 2 a.m, I came downstairs in my robe. Melissa was dancing in the living room, a glass of wine in hand, music shaking the floor. "Could you keep it down?" I asked calmly. She spun toward me, eyes flashing. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did the guest have trouble sleeping?" My smile didn't falter. "Guests don't hold the deed, dear." "But since you brought it up, I suppose you're right. Guests usually leave, and you're free to, anytime you like her glass nearly shattered in her grip." Daniel muttered something about turning the music down, but she stormed past me instead, muttering curses under her breath. I climbed the stairs, each step slow, deliberate, savoring the victory. The third strike came at Christmas itself. They threw their party without me, just as they'd planned. I stayed upstairs, listening to the clink of glasses, the laughter of guests, the chatter of people who probably believed Daniel and Melissa were perfect hosts. But I didn't sulk. I didn't cry. I had already arranged for something better. See, the invitations Melissa sent out had gone through my mailbox first, and I had written a few notes of my own. Anonymous, of course. Simple things. Ask Daniel about his mother's sacrifices. You might be surprised. Wonder who's really paying the bills in that house. Look closer before you envy what they have. When Melissa's friends gathered that night, I heard the whispers. Questions slipped into conversations, laughter that turned sharp, curious eyes scanning the house with suspicion. And though Melissa tried to plaster her fake smile on, I knew she felt it. The shift, the judgment, her perfect image had begun to crack. Later that night, after the guests were gone, I came downstairs. Melissa was furiously cleaning up, her cheeks red, her movements sharp and violent. Daniel sat slumped on the couch, drained, silent. She whirled on me. You did something, didn't you? I tilted my head. What makes you think that? Her teeth clenched. They were asking questions. Questions they shouldn't have even known to ask. I placed my hand on the back of a chair and leaned forward. Maybe people are just curious. After all, it's not every day they see a couple living in a house they didn't earn, funded by a woman they treat like dirt. Daniel looked up, his eyes glassy, his voice trembling. Mum, please stop. Stop, I said, my voice low, steady. You told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas. You told me I'd ruin the mood. And tonight, you ruined yourselves without any help from me. Melissa's face twisted. She wanted to scream, she wanted to strike me, but she didn't. She couldn't, because deep down she knew I was right. The weeks that followed were a war of attrition. Melissa tried to freeze me out. I bought a space heater. She tried to starve me. I cooked my own meals. She tried to shame me. I held my head higher than ever before. Every move she made only made her look weaker, more desperate. And Daniel, poor Daniel, was caught in the middle, torn between the woman he married and the mother who refused to break. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because revenge isn't about surviving. It's about winning. And my plan to win had only just begun. When a family breaks, it doesn't shatter all at once. It splinters, one crack at a time, until the pieces barely hold together. That's how the weeks felt after Christmas. Splinters. Tiny fractures in the fragile illusion Daniel and Melissa had built. And every day, I pressed on those cracks, slowly, deliberately, until I could hear them strain. The first real fracture came on a cold January morning. Melissa stormed into the kitchen holding the electric bill. Her hair was wild, her robe hanging loose, her voice shrill. "This is 3 months overdue!" she shrieked. 3 months! They're threatening to shut off the power again! Daniel trailed behind her, rubbing his temples, still half asleep. "I told you, I'll figure something out." "Figure something out?" Melissa snapped. "We don't have money for this. We don't have money for anything because your mother—" She froze when she saw me, sitting calmly at the table, sipping my tea. "Because your mother what?" I asked softly. Her eyes burned into me. "Because you stopped paying for everything. That's what." I set my cup down, meeting her glare without flinching. "Melissa, I stopped paying for you. Not for myself. I'm perfectly fine. The question is, why aren't you?" Daniel tried to intervene. "Mom, please! No, Daniel!" I cut him off. My voice was steady, sharp. "You wanted me out. You wanted independence. So be independent. Pay your own bills, cook your own meals, buy your own groceries. Isn't that what adults do?" Melissa's lips trembled with fury. Daniel looked at the floor, silent. And I smiled, because silence, in that moment, was admission. The second fracture came when Melissa's credit card was declined at a dinner. I wasn't there, of course, but I heard about it when she came home, slamming doors, throwing her purse across the room. "This is humiliating!" she screamed at Daniel. "Do you know what it's like to have the waiter hand you back your card in front of everyone?" Everyone staring, whispering, judging. Daniel's voice was tired, beaten. "I'll get another job. Just give me time." Melissa's laugh was bitter. Another job. You can't even keep the ones you get. Do you realize what I gave up for you? Do you realize the life I could have had if I married someone else? I stood at the top of the stairs listening. My chest should have hurt, but it didn't. It felt freeing, because for the first time, Daniel wasn't just betraying me. He was tasting betrayal himself. The third fracture came with the neighbors. Melissa prided herself on appearances. She wanted everyone to think she was living a dream life, happy marriage, beautiful home, perfect stability. But whispers had started. At church, at the grocery store, even at the salon she visited every week, people talked about how I had paid for everything, about how they were living in a house that wasn't really theirs, about how the perfect couple image was just that, an image. One afternoon, as Melissa watered the lawn, Mrs. Jensen from next door waved cheerfully and called out, "How's your mother-in-law doing?" "She's such a strong woman, raising you all like that." Melissa froze, her smile faltering. "She's fine." But I saw her grip tighten on the hose, her knuckles white, her image was slipping. And for Melissa, that was worse than hunger, worse than debt, worse than anything. Then came the breaking point. It was late February, snow still covering the yard, the wind howling against the windows. I was in my room reading when I heard the crash. Glass shattering, Melissa screaming. I rushed downstairs to find them in the middle of a storm. Melissa was standing over Daniel, her face red, tears streaking her mascara. A broken glass lay at his feet. "You're useless!" she screamed. "Useless! Your mother controls everything and you just let her. Do you even realize how pathetic that makes you look?" Daniel's voice was hollow. "What do you want me to do, Melissa?" "I can't change the clause. I can't make her leave." Melissa's hands shook as she pointed at me. "Then you tell her. Tell her she's done here. Tell her to pack her things and get out." The room fell silent. Daniel looked at me. His lips parted, but no words came. His eyes, my son's eyes, were wet, full of shame. And in that silence, Melissa realized the truth. He couldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. Because deep down, even after everything, Daniel knew I was stronger than both of them combined. Melissa's rage turned on me. "You think you've won, don't you?" She spat. "You think you're clever, hiding behind your stupid little claws, making us look like fools in front of everyone. But you haven't won. You've ruined everything. And if you think I'll stay here and rot with you, you're wrong." She grabbed her coat, her purse, her keys, and stormed out into the snow. The door slammed so hard the walls rattled. Daniel sank into the couch, his head in his hands. And I stood there, calm as the winter night. Because I knew what Melissa hadn't realized yet. This was only the beginning. That night, Daniel knocked on my door. His voice was low, broken. "Mom, I don't know what to do." I looked at him for a long time. My son, my only child, the boy I had raised, protected, sacrificed for, the boy who had betrayed me. "You live with the choices you've made," I said quietly. "Just like I did. Just like everyone. He wanted comfort. He wanted forgiveness. But I gave him truth instead, because truth was the only thing that would set me free. And as the snow fell outside, covering the house like a shroud, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't just survive this betrayal. I would turn it into their undoing, piece by piece, fracture by fracture, until there was nothing left for them to cling to, because they had cut me out of Christmas. But I would cut them out of the life they thought they owned. Revenge doesn't happen in a single strike. It's patient, it's careful. It waits until the wound festers, until the guilty are desperate for relief. And then it twists the knife. That was the state of the house after Melissa stormed out into the snow. Silent, heavy. My son pacing the rooms like a ghost, trying to patch together a life that had already begun to unravel. But I wasn't content to sit back and watch. No, this was the time to move. The time to claim back every ounce of power I had once handed away. And I knew exactly where to start. The bills. For months, I had been quietly letting them stack up. Every utility that ran through my name, I had stopped paying. At first it was petty, a small taste of discomfort. But now, with Melissa gone, Daniel was alone to carry the weight. And he couldn't. The electricity went first. The house grew dark earlier and earlier each evening. Daniel lit candles, stumbling through the halls like a man living in the past. The water followed. Cold showers, dripping faucets, the kind of small miseries that eat away at you piece by piece. And through it all, I stayed perfectly comfortable. I had my own space heater, my own bottled water, my own stash of groceries. Years of sacrifice had taught me how to survive with scraps. Daniel, raised on my protection, didn't have that skill. One night, he knocked on my door, candlelight flickering against his pale face. "Mum, can you at least help me with the power? Just until I get back on my feet?" I stared at him. My son. My betrayer. My boy who once called me his hero, now reduced to begging for light. "I already gave you everything," I said. My voice was soft but sharp enough to cut. "And you told me I wasn't welcome. So tell me, Daniel, why should I keep paying for a home you insisted was yours?" He didn't answer. He just lowered his head and walked away. And that silence was victory. But I didn't stop there. Power and water were survival, but reputation, oh, that was their pride. And Melissa, though she was gone, still lingered in the minds of the community as Daniel's polished, enviable wife. So I sharpened my next blade. Sunday came, and with it, the church gathering. Our small town prided itself on family values, on sacrifice, on community. And for years, people had whispered admiration for me. The strong, single mother, the woman who gave up everything for her son. But people forget. And Melissa had worked hard to rewrite the story, to paint me as controlling, outdated, a burden. It was time to remind them of the truth. I stood at the pulpit, my hand steady, my voice carrying through the quiet room. "I want to tell you a story," I began. A story of a mother who gave her life to her child. She worked 2 jobs, skipped meals, sold heirlooms, all so that her boy would never go hungry. She bought him a car when his was repossessed. She paid his debts when they swallowed him. She even signed her house over to him, believing it would secure his future, every head turned towards me. Eyes softened with pity, with respect. And do you know what she received in return? I asked, my voice lowering. She was told she wasn't welcome in the very home she built. She was called a guest. She was told she would ruin Christmas. Gasps filled the room. Whispers rippled like waves. I lifted the documents I had brought, the bank transfers, the receipts, the clause itself. "This is proof," I said, "that every comfort they enjoy was built on her sacrifice, and proof that no matter whose name is on the deed, this house belongs to her until her dying breath." Silence, heavy, judging. Daniel sat in the front row, his face in his hands. Melissa wasn't there, but her absence screamed louder than any denial could. Finally, I finished. Family is not measured by what they take from you. Family is measured by the respect they give in return, and without respect, there is nothing. The applause that followed wasn't for Daniel. It wasn't for Melissa. It was for me. And in that moment, their carefully crafted image collapsed. Back home, Daniel couldn't look me in the eye. "You embarrassed me," he whispered. "No," I corrected. "I revealed you." There's a difference. But the sweetest part of revenge, it wasn't just exposing them, it was reclaiming what they thought they owned. The basement of the house had always been unused, just storage, dust, forgotten boxes of the past. But under the clause, I had every right to lease out space. And so I did. Within weeks, a small family moved in, a young couple with a baby, grateful for a safe, warm place to stay. They paid rent directly to me. When Melissa found out, oh, how she screamed, "You can't just bring strangers into our home." I looked at her with calm amusement. Into my home? And yes, I can. You wanted me out of Christmas? Well, now you can celebrate with new neighbors under your roof. Daniel said nothing. He just sat quietly, staring at the floor. Because deep down, he knew I was right. And so the house transformed. No longer their private kingdom, no longer their polished stage. It became what it always truly was. Mine. Melissa hated every second of it. The new tenants, the whispers from neighbors, the bills piling high. She lashed out more and more, her voice sharp, her anger boiling over. Until finally, one night, she spat the words I had been waiting to hear. "I can't live like this! I'm not staying in this house with her another day!" She grabbed her bag, her coat, her keys, and stormed out into the night for the second and final time. This time, she didn't come back. That left Daniel, alone, broken, drowning. I watched him move through the house like a shadow, avoiding me, avoiding everyone. Sometimes I heard him crying at night, muffled sobs from the room below. And I felt nothing, no sympathy, no pity, just the cold satisfaction of justice. Because for the first time, he was living the life I had lived for decades, alone, struggling, desperate. And unlike me, he hadn't earned it through sacrifice. He had earned it through betrayal. But my revenge wasn't complete. Not yet. The bills were just the beginning. The church humiliation was the middle. Melissa leaving was a victory, yes. But it wasn't the final one. Number. The final victory would come when Daniel faced the truth, not just in whispers, not just in church, but in front of the entire world he had once tried to impress. The truth that without me, he was nothing, and without respect, he had no family. Revenge is not just about breaking someone, it's about making sure they remember why they broke. Daniel had lost Melissa. He had lost the community's respect. He had lost comfort, stability, pride. But he still clung to one thing, the illusion that he was in control. That somehow, one day, he could rebuild everything without me. And that illusion? That's what I needed to crush. It started with the tenants. The young couple downstairs adored me. They saw me not as a burden, but as a matriarch, someone who had wisdom, someone who had fought for her place in the world. They'd often knock on my door, bringing me food, asking for advice about their baby. And each time they did, Daniel saw it. He saw strangers treating me with more love and gratitude than he ever had. One evening, the tenants invited me for dinner in their little rented space. Daniel passed us in the hallway, his face pale, his eyes darting from their smiles to my calm composure. "Come join us, Daniel," the young husband offered politely. Daniel shook his head. No, I'm fine." But I could see it, the shame burning behind his eyes, the realization that his own mother was being cherished by strangers while he stood alone. The next stage of my plan was financial. For years I had covered his mistakes, debts, loans, unpaid credit cards. He assumed I would always be there to pick up the pieces. But not anymore. I knew exactly how much he owed, and I knew exactly when the collectors would come knocking. So I waited. The first call came one chilly afternoon while he was sitting at the kitchen table. "Mr. Thompson, this is a reminder about your outstanding balance. If payment is not received, We will be forced to escalate collection efforts, his face drained of color. He hung up quickly, glancing at me like a child caught stealing. Cookies. I didn't say a word. The second call came the next day. Then the letters. Then the threats of repossession. Daniel begged me. "Mom, please, just this once, help me clear it and I promise I'll change." I leaned back in my chair, looking him in the eye. "Just this once?" "Daniel, I said that the first time. I said it the 5th time. I said it the 10th. And each time you promised me you'd change. But promises mean nothing when they're made from comfort. True change only comes from pain. So no. This time, you'll face it yourself." He broke down, sobbing into his hands, and I watched, unmoved. Because the boy I had raised, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, was gone. All that remained was a man shaped by entitlement, and entitlement only learns through destruction. But the final strike wasn't about money. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about truth. The truth I had carried for years. The truth Daniel had buried under Melissa's lies. The truth I had kept quiet because I believed someday he would see it for himself. He never did. So I made sure everyone else did instead. The opportunity came at a town meeting. Our community gathered monthly to discuss local issues, repairs, events, projects. Daniel and Melissa used to attend together, flaunting themselves as a power couple. But this time, Daniel came alone, his clothes wrinkled, his shoulders slumped. I sat in the front row, and when the floor opened for announcements, I stood. "I want to speak about family," I began. My voice echoed in the hall. About sacrifice. About betrayal. Murmurs filled the room. Eyes turned toward me. I continued. "For 30 years, I gave everything to my son. I worked 2 jobs to feed him. I gave up college so he could dream. I sold heirlooms to send him on trips. I signed my house over to him, thinking it was an act of love. And do you know what he told me in return?" I let the silence stretch. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas. That I would ruin the mood. That I was a guest in the very home I built with my own hands. Gasps rippled through the room. People turned, staring at Daniel. His face was crimson, his eyes wide. I lifted the documents once more. "This is proof of every bill I paid. Proof of every debt I covered. Proof that the life he lived was not built by his hands, but by mine." The whispers grew louder. Heads shook in disbelief. "And this," I held up the clause, "is proof that no matter what he claims, no matter how he tries to rewrite the story, this house is mine until I draw my last breath." The hall erupted. Some applauded. Others muttered in disgust. At him, not me. Daniel stood, trembling, his voice breaking. "Mom, please stop!" But it was too late. The truth was out. His image was destroyed. His lies were ashes. And his betrayal was carved into the memory of everyone who had once admired him. That night, back, at the house, Daniel collapsed onto the couch. His face was pale, his eyes empty. "You didn't have to do that," he whispered. I sat across from him, calm, unflinching. "Yes, Daniel, I did. Because you needed to see what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. You wanted me invisible. Now you're the one who disappears." Tears slid down his cheeks. For the first time, he looked not like a man, not even like a betrayer, but like the scared little boy I had once held. But it didn't move me. Not anymore. Because I had finally learned the lesson he refused to. Family without respect is no family at all. From that day forward, Daniel lived in the ruins of his choices. No Melissa, no reputation, no comfort. Just the shell of a man haunted by the mother he betrayed. And me? I reclaimed my power. I reclaimed my dignity. I reclaimed the house that had always been mine. And for the first time in years, I slept peacefully.